Welcome to revision week 3. This week we are looking at primary memory, which is on paper 1. So find sheet 3, which has been given to you in lesson. Have a pen ready to complete as we go through. Okay, so in the paper exam, you need to know about 2 types of memory and storage. Primary memory is memory that's accessed quickly by the CPU, and it stores your programs and data while they are being used, and it's mostly volatile, things like RAM, ROM, cache, and virtual memory. And secondary storage is non-volatile storage, storing data and files when they are not in use, things like optical, magnetic, and solid state. Today we're looking at primary memory though. Okay, so what is primary memory? What did we just say? Computers need to store data and programs while they are being used, while the computer is on. This is so that the CPU can access it quickly. Okay? And this is primary memory. And the types you need to know about: RAM, ROM, virtual memory, cache memory, and the registers in the CPU. So, first type of primary memory you need to know: RAM. RAM is used to store your programs and data that are currently in use, they're currently open, and they've been loaded from the hard disk. It's generally much smaller than a hard disk or secondary storage, and the contents of RAM are lost when the computer is turned off. It's volatile, it's lost when the power is not on. The more RAM a computer has though, the more programs or applications it can have open at the same time, because they have more space in RAM for them. ROM, read-only memory. ROM is read-only. You cannot change what's in it. You cannot edit or delete the contents. It is non-volatile. That means the data is not lost when the power is gone, when it's removed or turned off. But it's used to store instructions that do not need to be changed or updated. And a big example of that is a chip called the BIOS on the motherboard, which basically starts up the computer system. A BIOS, a special chip on the motherboard that starts up the computer. It's the very first thing that loads on your computer system. It looks something like this. That is the BIOS that's loading from the ROM chip on your computer screen system. And there's all the settings. Why is it saved on ROM, not RAM? If it was saved in RAM, it would be lost. So it needs to be saved on ROM. It's read-only and it's non-volatile. And the third and final type you need to know about is cache memory. Quick access memory inside the CPU, and it stores copies of regularly used data that have been copied from RAM. Stuff that's using often. It's very small and it's volatile inside the CPU. Okay, definition. And I want to know 3 things about RAM, ROM, and cache memory. Okay, checking your answers. There we go. That's what you should have. Primary storage, memory accessed quickly by the CPU, and it stores data and programs while they're in use. It's mostly volatile while the computer is being used. RAM is volatile, stores your data and programs while they're in use, and it's read and write. You can both read and write. Add to your answer, make sure you've got 3 points. ROM, non-volatile, stores instructions, for example, the BIOS chip, and it is read-only. You cannot change the contents of ROM. And finally, cache memory, quick access memory in the CPU, inside the CPU. It's much quicker than accessing it from RAM or from main memory, and it stores regularly used data and instructions. Regularly used data and instructions. And again, it's volatile. Checking, PowerPoint pen, add to your answers. Okay, let's move on. One final type of memory that you need to know: primary memory. Computer is users trying. Imagine this: computer users trying to use his work and run multiple programs. However, he wants to do Word, his emails open, internet browser, and the operating system. He only has 4 GB of RAM. there's not enough space in his RAM, so how can his computer deal with it? Well, there's one other type of memory we need to use, and that's called virtual memory. You need to know where it is, what it's used for, and why and when is it needed. So, virtual memory. Virtual memory can be used to store data and instructions when RAM is full or when it's not large enough, when there's no more space in RAM. It's part of secondary storage, like the hard drive. It's used on part of secondary storage, and it's used as an extension of RAM, like extra RAM when you do not have enough RAM. Any data, however, in virtual memory has to be transferred back into RAM before it can be used. So anything that's put into the hard drive, into secondary storage virtual memory, has to be transferred back to RAM before it can be used. And that takes time and slows down the computer. Just for an example of how this works, imagine here, look, here's your programs. If you wanted to open another program, for example, you wanted to open an internet browser, something from RAM would have to be transferred to virtual memory. Well, in this case, we're going to transfer email to virtual memory because it's open but not being used. There's no space in RAM for our internet browser. However, if I suddenly wanted to use my internet email program again though, something else would have to be transferred to virtual memory, like the web processor, to make space for the email to be loaded back into RAM. You cannot run it directly from RAM. So it takes time to load it from virtual memory back into RAM again, and that's why it's slower. There we go. It all takes time. As secondary storage is not as fast as RAM, it takes time to move it back. Better solution is to have more RAM, which means you do not have to use virtual memory on secondary storage as much or not at all. The more RAM you have, the more programs that can be open at once. So on the sheet, what is virtual memory? How does it help? Why is it best to avoid it? And how can you avoid using virtual memory? Okay, checking your answers, adding to your answers, purple pen. Virtual memory is using secondary storage as extra primary memory. It's like having extra RAM, and it's used when RAM is full. Why is it best to avoid? Because it's slower to use because programs in virtual memory have to be transferred back to RAM before they can be used, and that takes time. How can you avoid using it? Having more RAM means virtual memory is used less or not at all. More space to store open programs and data. More RAM, basically. Checking, adding to your answer. Final thing for today. When you are talking about primary memory, secondary storage, when you're talking about any of these things, there are some key words that you need to know and use. Okay, very important. So we have volatile, non-volatile, capacity, cost, speed, reliability, durability, and portability. These are the key words that you need to know and use when you're describing and talking about these types of memory and storage. What do they mean? So we've got volatile, means it loses the contents of data when there's no power. Non-volatile means it keeps data even when the power is off. Capacity is the amount of data that can be stored. Cost is the cost per megabyte or gigabyte. Speed is how quickly can you read or write the data. Reliability means how long will it keep working for. Durability, how tough or how easily damaged is it, or how resistant to damage is it. And portability, how easy is it to transport, to move around. So on your sheet, take the time now, write down these keywords. I'd rather you write them down correctly, write down these definitions onto the sheet to finish today's sheet. Okay, after you've finished writing those down, pause the video if necessary. And then finally, the last part of this week's revision, go to LearnCompDean, select Computer Science and Revision topic, and complete Revision Quiz 3. As previously, make sure you click the check button to see if you got it right, and then try again if you don't after you've seen the corrected answers. You should be getting 100% on this by the end of the quiz. Good luck, and I'll check your working lesson.